welcome to the very first Autism Act podcast that's coming out to you today on the brand new Autism Act YouTube channel. So this is really exciting. It's the first time I've done a podcast, and as I explained in my little video the other day, that there's 2 points to the podcast. 2 points to the YouTube channel, sorry. One is that I'm going to be doing a monthly podcast, which will come out on the first Wednesday of every month. And secondly, it's a chance for me to share some information, some theory, some techniques and strategies with you through Tutorial Tuesday and Strategy Saturday. So hopefully you've heard that information and you're going to be able to access that over the coming weeks. What have I been up to as part of Autism Act? Well, actually, even though we're in a funny situation as a small business with COVID-19, I've actually been really busy. So last week I was able to attend a SENCO cluster meeting, which was via Zoom. It's really good actually to connect to lots of SENCOs or special educational needs coordinators that I know within a group. It was run by an educational psychologist working over in Rochford, and we were able to connect as a group to talk about the SEN issues that are going on at the moment. How are people providing for those children coming into school, and how are people providing for those children who maybe need something different going out for them to do as part of their home learning. So it was really good to connect to people, and I think it's a bit of a lonely time at the moment, so that served another purpose as well, which was really nice. I've been contacted by a number of you about making different visual supports. The sensory trail one was really quite popular, so if you want some visual supports either made and emailed to you, or made, printed, laminated and posted or delivered, then if you have a little look at my Facebook page, Autism Act, capital A, capital ACT, you will see the type of things that I'm going to be making or have been making on there, and you can either contact me through the Facebook page, or you can email me at sarah@autismact.com, and we can have a little chat about what it is that you would like me to make for you. So that's a service that I'm still able to provide. For myself personally, I'm very pleased because I've been accepted to do a distance learning course in a level 2 mental health awareness. Now, I have looked at mental health before, and I have done different modules on it for all types of training that I've done in the past, but I've never actually got a qualification or done a series of learning for myself. So I think this is a really good area to add to my level of skill, and I'm looking forward to starting that shortly. I actually had my email last week to say that I'd been accepted and the enrolment package was coming out to me. So I can't wait to get started. I think that will be a really interesting course to do. Plus also it will help, I feel, the business and the business that I'm providing as well. Now, I just want to say a little thank you to my daughter, Rosie, because she's been helping me get the YouTube channel up and running, and using her media course to help do that, because to be honest, I just make a video and upload it. I can't do all the fancy stuff that goes with it. So a big thank you to my Rosie, who's been furloughed and so has some time to be able to put that together for me. So thank you, love. I really do appreciate that. Now, I've got a guest with me today, which is very exciting. So she's been sitting patiently for the last 4 minutes in the background, but I know she's there. So I just want to introduce Liz, who's the local head teacher. Hello, Liz.
Hello, Sarah.
And Liz is going to talk to us today a little bit about her school and a little bit about some of the autism work that her school provides. So Liz, it's really lovely to welcome you to this very first podcast.
Thank you, Sarah.
That's all right. You know that we're going to be setting the bar, don't you? So we're either going to go terribly wrong or terribly right, but hopefully it will be the latter, and this will be the start of many good things to come.
So Liz,
tell us a little bit about your school.
So our school is tiny. We have only 100 students in the whole school, and it's in a big town in Essex, one of the biggest towns in Essex. But it is a Victorian school, so it's quite quaint, with lots of beautiful grounds. And we have a high proportion of special needs children, so around 29% of our students have got an identified special need. At the moment, we don't have any children with an EHC plan, but we do have several students who are on the spectrum, ranging from social communication difficulties right the way up to Asperger's. I'm also very proud to say that our head student last year was a child with autism, and our head student this year is a child with ADHD who also presents with characteristics of children that are on the spectrum. So we are a very, very inclusive school.
I mean, that's amazing, Liz. That's amazing that those pupils are able to carry out that role in the school and feel really valued. I mean, inclusion at its best. So fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, we're very fortunate because we are a small school. It does feel like a family. So we are in a position to tailor the provision for the children very specifically. So in terms of, let's say, the children with autism, we've got several at the moment. We have an autism champion. So all of our teaching assistants have a specialism. So one is maths, one is literacy, one is speech and language. And we also have an autism champion among them. And she will attend your training.
Lovely.
She will attend, different courses. We've had people come in from outside and run the AET training, so the Autism Education Trust. We've had Tier 1 training for that. So it's a whole school approach. And all the teachers are expected to run their classrooms with children with autism in mind. Because what is good for a child with autism is, of course, going to be good for every child, because every child likes direction, every child likes to know where they are. It provides them with security and a sense of knowing where they're going, which is absolutely essential for their learning. So our autism champion advises staff what kinds of things to put in visual timetables. She produces resources that are tailored to individual children, and she will then run specific interventions for those children using some of the strategies that she's picked up on her training. Now that will range from things like the bucket concentration. It will be books that she's picked up and activities from books. And then the children will have maybe 15 minutes every day with her, irrespective of whether she's the teaching assistant in their class or not. Because one of the things that we don't believe in is shoulder to shoulder support. So we don't believe that children necessarily do better if they have one adult that is supporting them all the time. We feel it's better for them to access a range of support, especially for children with autism, because in the event that their key member of staff was off sick, then that can also lead to stress and anxiety. Whereas if there is a team around that child, it's much easier to meet their needs and to kind of legislate for contingencies in that way. So spreading the load is a lot easier and makes life a lot easier for those children.
I mean, there's lots of really fascinating stuff that you've brought up there, Liz. I mean, I'll just let the people that are listening know that the AET is the Autism Education Trust. They do a series of training modules, which are absolutely amazing. I've been a registered trainer myself in my previous role, and I really advocate their training. And you had that as a whole staff, which
we did,
again is a really fantastic approach, because then everybody has heard the basic information, especially on the Tier 1, which is the making sense of autism. So, that's really fantastic. Secondly, I just want to pick up on, you talked about the bucket time, which is a joint attention intervention. And that's Gina Davis, attention autism. And again, people can look look that up. There's official training for that, which is absolutely amazing. I've been lucky to do that myself. I think she's doing some parent modules coming out soon, actually, virtually, which is I've shared on my Facebook page. So you've got some really well identified training, some really well identified interventions going on in your school. And I also like the fact that you talked about you don't have that Velcro approach of one person to one child. It's a team. And I think that can come with difficulties if not everybody is working together, but actually it can be an amazing strength and really give our children a level of independence as well, which I think is very important. Liz, if you could just pick out one intervention that maybe you've put in place in your school that you feel has had a really good impact for children, especially those who are autistic, what would you talk about? Tell us about that.
I think that would have to be the zones of regulation. We introduced that a few years ago as a whole school strategy because we found it was very, very effective for our children on the spectrum in terms of giving them a vocabulary around feelings, because it isn't always easy for them to explain how they feel, as we know, and that can often be what leads to what people would describe as a meltdown or an emotional overload, we would call that, or a moment of being overwhelmed, because feelings are very difficult to make sense of, even for neurotypical children. But for children on the spectrum, that is particularly hard. So that has been brilliant. One of the good things about that is the pictures that come with it. So the children can actually either look at a face that is part of a pack and identify that with a person or with a feeling, so that they know what that looks like. Words for feelings can be a bit abstract, so children need to associate that with something. So with the zones, you've got the 4 different colours that are associated with different feelings in that particular phase, if you like, and that's been really powerful. And we've actually shared that with parents as well. And parents have found that they've used that at home. Particularly, I would say the yellow zone is probably the zone that we talk about the most, because that's the zone that can go either way. If you're in the yellow zone, it can be, this is all going to end in tears, or, okay, let's all calm down and get ourselves back in the green zone. And we've found that parents talk about that a lot at home with their children. If they're feeling a little bit fizzy, we say, if they're feeling a bit fizzy and things are getting on their nerves, it has been a very simple but very powerful tool for children to use to talk about their feelings and to give people signposts as to when they're not quite feeling themselves. So what started out as a strategy that we used specifically with children on the spectrum in mind has actually become a very powerful tool, not just for our children, but also for our whole community.
Yeah, because I know that you've shared that and really with your parents and really got your parents involved with that as well, haven't you? And again, it's about that whole team approach, isn't it, around the children, whether that's staff to staff or staff to parent and then to child. I think that's really important. Now, I mean, I love the zones of regulation. It's something I've put in place before, in a number of schools, and I really advocate people looking that up and finding out more about that, because it's a strategy for life, I think.
Absolutely.
And we're teaching our children early on that it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be worried, it's okay to be tired. Actually, the most important thing is, what do we do about it? Yes. I mean, where did you hear about the zones of regulation, and what made you decide to put that in place?
I think it actually came from the team that you were part of. In your former incarnation, because I think it's so effective. It's a no-brainer, really. So I know that we'd heard about it from specialist teachers that we had coming into school, and then we had a child with autism come to us. and therefore a specialist teacher became attached. So that was part of what we asked them to do, was that whole school training, not just on specifically the autism, but also on the zones of regulation for the whole school, and to see how that could impact. Because what's important with children on the spectrum is that everybody understands where they're coming from. And I think it's all very well running an intervention for those children themselves. It can help them, but actually, unless everybody else is talking the same language, they're kind of always operating in a vacuum, and that would reinforce those feelings that children on the spectrum feel. So actually, when everybody is using the same language and everybody is aware of what it means to be in the red zone or the yellow zone or the green zone or the blue zone, that actually, as you said before, gives the whole community consistency. Everybody is talking about that from the same point of view and coming at that from the same angle. So, children on the spectrum have only got to say, look, I'm in the blue zone, and all the children around them know exactly what that means, and they would know to give the child a wide berth. They would say that for any child. This is what I'm saying. It's been really good.
And I think as well, so, what's important with regards to training for people, excuse me, sorry, is that people need to know why we're doing something. So here's the zones of regulation. It's really lovely. Yes. Here's the book. Here's all the strategies. I want you to go off and do this lesson and run this intervention with children. But actually, what's the point if you don't really understand why you're doing it? Which I think is why training, that training is my big thing, isn't
Absolutely,
it? It's what I really love. And if we know why we're doing something, then actually we're more likely to carry it out to a good standard. So it's great that you've invested, in your staff, with everybody having that training.
And it has to be a culture, Sarah. It's no good I'm in the fortunate position, although I'm the head, I'm also the SENCO. Yes. So that gives me a unique perspective on driving these strategies forward. I haven't got to get senior leadership on side because I know the value of those particular things. So I can drive that from an SLT point of view. And I think that's really important in any school that is looking to take on something like zones of regulation. Has to be a culture. It's not an intervention in that sense.
No, and you have to be committed to it. There's no way of doing it half-heartedly or occasionally asking the child to say what zone they think they're in, because if you don't do it every day on a regular basis and it's not followed up with every member of staff knowing about it, then actually it becomes a futile exercise, really.
Well, it does. And I think what we were saying earlier about this year's head student did have, a couple of years, when he went up into year 4, he had a lot of anger issues, which we worked through with him using the zones of regulation. And one of the things that because they were elected this year, so they had to give a speech to the rest of the school. And one of the things that he said was exactly what you've just said. So here we've got this 10-year-old child gets up in front, he was shaking like a leaf, gets up in front of the whole school and says, I've learned being here, but actually it's okay to be angry, but it's what I do with that matters, and it's about recognising that I can't stay angry. I have to.
Wow.
We were in bits in that assembly.
Did you cry?
Of course we did. But it was really powerful, and the child that was elected. And this was, that child got 46% of the student vote.
Wow.
And the student then that was elected as deputy head student said a very similar thing. He talked about his resilience and how, making mistakes had been a real issue for him, and that he would turn that on himself. But that, again, through the zones of regulation and learning about emotional regulation, had recognised that wasn't necessarily the most productive approach to take in that situation, and had learned strategies to kind of get past that and overcome that. They are like tiny little men and women, the way that they talk about their feelings now, and the level of openness and honesty that they have. It's fantastic. And I think because they do, their parents are not frightened of it either, because they're talking about it in a way that is accessible to everyone. You know,
Yes.
it's very simple language, it's very simple principles.
And it's everyday vocabulary for everyday
Absolutely,
life, everyday
absolutely,
strategies. Yeah.
absolutely, at
I
every
mean,
level.
there is your impact right there. Two children telling you how zones of regulation has
Yeah,
made such a positive impact. I mean,
absolutely.
that's an incredible story. And I would say if anybody is interested in knowing more about zones of regulation, then please contact me, because that is something I've obviously given training on before, and would be willing to guide people through that with some training modules myself. Now, Liz, just like the last question really for you, the last autism question for
Yeah,
you is, I know you have sought a little bit of support from
yes,
Autism Act and myself, and I just wonder if you could tell the people listening a little bit about that.
absolutely. So we have a child coming to us in September to reception with an EHC plan. And our school has been named on the plan. And we wanted to make sure, I mean, this was pre-COVID. Some of our plans have now gone out of the window because we
Yes.
haven't been able to do the transition that we wanted to do. But we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to support him in his transition from the setting that he's in now into reception, where we will only have 15 children. So that will be very beneficial to him, because we're a small school.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've only got 15 children at any one time in reception, and then from year one upwards they are in mixed age classes. But we want to make sure that during the time that he is with us, that we are doing everything that we can and keeping abreast of the new strategies and new thinking and new research, because that's the problem for class teachers. We have so many different
Yes.
needs that we have to meet. It isn't possible for us to keep abreast of everything. Whereas a specialist service like Autism Act, that's what you're paying for. You're paying for that up-to-date knowledge. You're paying for, and if I may say, Sarah, in your own personal case, your expertise with certain aspects of autism. So, for example, the four key areas of difference.
Yes.
That's really, really important for each child to understand where their areas of challenge are, and that's going to be different for every child on the spectrum, just as it is for any child who is neurotypical. So we need that support. We need to be able to draw on the expertise of people like yourselves, who are working in that arena all the time, who are attending training, who are attending conferences, who are getting all of those messages, the most up-to-date thinking, the most up-to-date approaches, to ensure that that child's time at our school is the happiest and most productive, and the most fulfilling that it can be.
Definitely. And, I said we had a lovely plan of everything we were going to do in the summer term,
We
didn't we,
did,
to
yeah.
get ready. But, it's not cancelled, it's just postponed. So
Yes,
we'll see
absolutely,
where that
for
takes us.
sure.
But yeah, I mean, thanks for that, Liz. I mean, it's, obviously it's a pleasure to be asked to do some work for your school, and I'm looking forward to it actually getting started
Yeah,
beyond
no,
a
it'll be good.
meeting. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, Liz, thank you ever so much for joining our very first podcast today. And I
it's
hope that
very
people,
exciting.
well, I hope that people have found it really interesting to hear your perspective. I think what I'm hoping for on the podcast is that everybody I ask is to join me is going to have a slightly different
Yes.
journey, and I think it's so healthy to hear different perspectives. So Liz, as we said earlier, is a local head teacher. She's the head teacher of a small school, and she's also the SENCO. And just, I think the outlook that you have for you and your staff and your children is really fantastic. And
Thank you.
you need to keep going on with that, because that's a little beacon of light going on there for sure. Now, before I let Liz go, I do have a burning question, and I'm gonna.
Okay.
She actually does know what it is, because I did tell her. But this Liz is, so people get a little bit more of an insight into you personally. Liz, if a film was going to be made of your life,
Yeah.
who would you choose to play you, and what would the film be called?
Well, if she was still alive, it would be Marilyn Monroe, of course, but she's
Oh,
not.
of course.
So the actress that I think I would like to play me is called, and I think it's Evangeline Lilly. She plays Wasp in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think she's quite feisty, and I think the title of the film, you're laughing. I think the title of the film would have to be Rules. What rules?
Oh, Liz, I think there's nothing more we can say to that. We're going to end it there. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an
You're very
absolute
welcome.
pleasure. And I
Thank
look
you,
forward to
Sarah.
catching up with you again
Thank you.
another time.
Thank you. You take care.